we'll be moving on to the topic of employee data imports, followed by provisioning settings and role-based permissions. So these are the three important topics of agenda in our session. So before we get into this employee data imports, any questions from anyone from the previous topics? Foundation data imports or the business rules? Anything? Yeah. So let me open one presentation for the employee data imports, guys. So we basically have some sequence of imports that we have to follow for the employee data. So that is what I'm going to introduce you now. This is one, guys. So employee data to be uploaded into SuccessFactors, it's not one single file. So for each and every portlet of information that we fill on the front end, for every portlet, we have the respective upload file format. Okay, so when you have to hire an employee through import process, you will have multiple files that are required to be imported. In that, there are 6 mandatory files that you have to upload to say that there is an employee got created in the SuccessFactors system. So that is, these are the 6 files starting from basic import till the personal information. These are the 6 files that we have to upload in a sequence. The same sequence what is present here, in the same sequence we have to import them. Where the first file here called the basic import is basically taking the responsibility of creating the user in the system. And we already know how to use that basic import also. In the initial introduction to mastery level sessions, we even use that format whenever we treated SuccessFactors as a non-EC system. To create users in the SuccessFactors system, we have used this basic import format and we have actually imported it. Okay, so the similar format is what we are going to upload again, where even in this process also, the basic import will first create the user. Turning that user into a proper employee is what the remaining 5 files will do, where each and every file is going to represent the data of one particular portlet, like biographical information portlet, employment details portlet, job information portlet, that way. So each of these 5 files are representing 5 portlets end of the day. And these 5 portlets are treated as the mandatory portlets. So for you to say the employee is hired in the system, these 5 are the mandatory portlets. On top of these 5, if you maintain any other portlets of information, it is optional, like address details, contact details, education details. Any other portlets of information is purely optional. If the client is able to give the data, we can upload. Even if they don't give also, that's not a problem. But to say an employee is hired in the SuccessFactors system, these 5 portlets are important. So first the basic import file, followed by these 5 portlets. These 5 are mandatory to be imported, and we have to definitely follow this sequence of import. Okay, say example, you are importing 100 records in the first file, basic import for 100 users. In biographical information, if you are trying to import for 120 users, so that additional 20 users which are being directly imported into the biographical information, they will end up with error. They don't get imported in the biographical information, only in the basic import they'll be imported. So that way, so any file, any record that you're uploading, it will check for that user record, is there a record present in the previous file or not? Any file you import. Salary, if you're importing for 100 users, for that 100 users, job record is there or not, it will check. That way, so you have to follow this sequence for sure to properly upload the data. Okay, and now to practically see them in the system, let's go to the system and even do this activity. Any queries in the meanwhile? Just let me just get into the SuccessFactors system. Yeah, so we are in the system, and if we are required to import the data, we have this place import employee data, guys, which we are already used with actually. Import employee data. So this is a place from where we are required to import the data into the SuccessFactors system. And here in this place, the very first one called basic import is what we are already used with. The way we have to actually upload the mini master data is what we are already used with this basic import. So now this basic import file followed by biographical information, employment details, job like this compensation, various portlets of information you can import. For every portlet, you have the respective import file format here with which we will be uploading the data.
This basic import I'm not getting in the demo instance while I was doing the practice. I don't know.
Because of a permission, there is one permission that will be stopping the access to the basic import. I'll have a look into the permissions. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then guys, just give me a second. Yeah. So here now if I have to import the basic import, so in the initial days when we are using this basic import, guys, we used to actually download an existing template. So we go to employee export and we used to download the existing file. And in that, we used to add another record and we used to import the file. That way, the process we used to follow actually. Whereas the point is, it is not every time recommended to go in the same way. In Employee Central, we also have a structured way where instead of depending on employee export to download the data format, here itself you will have the download template, guys. Download template as an option you will have. If you go for this download template, here system will ask you for which file you want the download format. Basic import, biographical import, personal information, like this, different we have. So if you choose basic import, and then on the right hand bottom corner, click on generate template. That's it. So basic import is a file for which I want to have the format. Generate template. The file format is downloaded here immediately with the respective columns, what all we generally maintain in the basic import information. This is the one. So this is the one with all the respective columns, the similar columns what we have even used in the initial days. Status, user ID, username, first name, middle name, last name. All that fields are all present here. Filling all these details, you'll be able to create the user in the system. So here in this topic, in terms of this basic import file, something new that you're learning is to get the template, you can go for this download template option, and from there also you can get it. That's something new. But remaining thing like how to fill the file, how to upload the file, that is common to you. Okay. So now let's actually prepare one record and upload the user in the system. So status as active, user ID, I can just give it as upload user is 30th, right? Upload user 30 is what I'm giving the user ID. And the same is what I would like to give as the username. And then the first, one second. The first name, I'll just take something fresh. This just taking one participant's name, and the title as say analyst, gender as male, email ID samxy@gmail.com. And then we have the manager and HR column where either we have to give the IDs of the managers and HRs here, the manager ID and HR ID, or we have to give the standard strings as no underscore manager, no underscore HR, as if you guys remember. So if it is manager, if I want to give it as Anya Singh, Anya Singh's ID as SF admin is what I have to give. Where for HR, if I don't know who maintain as HR, I can use this string as no underscore HR. So similar way, we even have it for manager, no underscore manager, we have it. So it depends upon whether we are going to assign the manager now or we are not doing it as of now. It depends upon. So if we have the manager, give the ID. Else you can use that string called as no underscore manager in capital letters in the uppercase. So till this manager are these important columns that you have to take care. After these columns are done, in between department, location, all this, phone numbers, address details, everything are optional. In between, next important is the default locale, where we have to give the default language. Whenever the user logs into the SuccessFactors system, in which language you should experience the system is what we have to give. So US English is the language that I have given, language code, and whatever is the user ID that we have given here in the column B, the same thing has to be repeated in the extreme right column called as person ID external. Sorry, here assignment ID here. The assignment ID external is where you have to repeat it. That's it. Whatever is the user ID given in the starting user ID, you have to repeat here in the assignment ID external, the last column. So this is one. In between the language default locale is one, and the initial columns till the HR are important. So rest all optional. The client has the data that they can be imported, it's not mandatory. So this way we can prepare the file and we can import it into the system. Okay. Similar activity we have done earlier as well, in the mastery level. But if anybody has any questions now, we can discuss.
Can you just elaborate on the proxy column? While I was practicing, I was trying to understand the proxy.
So proxy, as the admins are having the proxy rights to all the employees in the company. So if you want to proxy any particular person, okay, instead of as an admin, we can proxy into anybody. But for this particular user ID, say example, here I have this upload underscore user 30. So if this ID has to be proxied by somebody else, somebody has to come into this employee's profile, but he's not an administrator, then who has to go into this person's account? His name should be given in the proxy column. So here, if say example, some person called Alex has to proxy. So Alex ID, LXC is the ID actually. So that ID is what we give here.
Okay.
Okay. that way. So instead of for the complete overall proxy at admin level proxy, one person acting as a proxy for another person, if you want to give it through file, here you can use this column, but that's an option, but nobody uses that way in practically in the real time. Generally proxy means the main proxy access only will be given. Okay, so I just saved the file. Now let me go to the system and get it imported. So in the import employee data, go for import data option, choose the basic import file, select the file that you prepared with the data just now, select it, and just click on import on the right hand bottom corner. So when you import it, clearly observe guys, the system gives you a message immediately stating your file has been uploaded to the server successfully. Okay, and it will be examined for proper text file format. An email notification will be generated once your file has been processed, indicating the final status. That means here the file has been loaded. It's not the data in the file. The entire file has been loaded internally. It will run all the checks, validations, everything. And finally, it will give us a result stating these many records are loaded. These are successful. These are errors. Reasons for errors, all that will be shared later on the email ID. So basic import file every time functions in the same manner. Whether you are importing one file or whether you are importing one record in the file or 10,000 records in the file, it remains the same. Every time it runs as a background job only. So the user ID that we have given is upload underscore user 30. So this user ID is what we can have it here. We search here. So mostly it should be created by now. It is ready. So I just created a user in the name of Darshan Vani, analyst as a job title, xyz@gmail.com as a mail ID, Anya Singh kept as the reporting manager, all these details, first name, last name, user ID, title, everything are present here. Okay. So this is how the user import actually happens. Of course, we have done it previously as well. That's straightforward. But for this user account that we have uploaded, if you see the profile of that user which got created now, entire profile will be blank, guys. You see this? The entire profile is left blank, where all the sections of information are empty. It says position information, no data, org information, no data, everything. All the portlets are blank with no data, no data. So that is where uploading the data into these portlets, we turn this basic user into a proper employee. Okay. So in that sequence is where we'll be going to do the second import called biographical information. And coming to biographical, guys, let me first show you how does the biographical information portlet looks like. Here it is. So there are total 3 fields only, and one is already filled in the employee. The rest two are the date of birth of the employee and the country of birth of the employee. That way, these 2 fields are also to be maintained. And now we have a separate file format to import these columns of data and do even import it. So that way, one after the other, we'll be importing the portlets. And biographical information is basically such a portlet which will have the fields that doesn't change over the lifetime. Once you give some information into that fields, that doesn't change. Date of birth, nobody normally get a requirement to change the date of birth. Similarly, country of birth and all can't be changed. Your first name, middle name, last name, they can change, but country of birth, date of birth kind of things can be changed. That is one-time input. So that is the biographical information. And here to import it, we have the biographical information as a template as well. And here if you go for this download template, you can get the template of biographical information as well. But right from the second file, you start seeing the behavior. In the basic import, it did not ask any questions, directly click on generate template. But now from here, from this biographical import, if you see, system will give us a list of columns. So what are all the possible columns of this portlet, out of which those columns what you are planning to definitely have in your file format. Okay. So these are the fields in which country of birth, parent ID, country of birth and person ID are the 2 fields that I want to have in my upload. Okay, and even I can also go for the date of birth like this. These are the columns I would like to have. Country of birth, date of birth, person ID. Where person ID field, if you see anywhere, guys, so you get it added along with the user ID. If you find person ID, or if you don't find user ID and you find person ID anytime, just keep adding the person ID as well. That will again repeat with the same input of user ID. Okay, so this one. So region of birth is a field where my client is not providing the data. So If that is a non-mandatory field, I can get it imported. Okay. Oh, sorry, I can get it excluded from the import, guys. So region of birth being a non-mandatory field and my client is not having the data for this field, I'm excluding it in the file format. This way, you can choose what all columns you want to have in your file format and import them. Okay. So that way you get it. User ID, country of birth, person ID, date of birth. That's the flexibility that we have. As long as the field is a non-mandatory field, you can happily exclude that field from the file format and create your own file format. And here I'm clicking on generate template on the right hand bottom. The format gets downloaded. That's it. So these are the very few columns that you are required to look into here, where we can add the data like the user ID, country of birth, person ID, date of birth. These are the different columns that we have. So user ID, we are already having our user ID for the same user. Country of birth looks to be a drop down field, obviously. That is where you can give the code of it. Yes, as a code, country of birth code. Person ID is what we have repeated as the user ID. Just repeat it here. And then the date of birth of this candidate, you can give it where let's just give it randomly something. Okay. Okay. So this is the data I've given, guys. 1st March 2021 is what I'm planning. So 2001 is what I'm planning. Whereas, so this format, again, the date format is a concern. So what format I have to give the date? The 1st March 2001. In which format I'll be able to give it as a question. So for legacy, for the legacy foundation objects and the MDF foundations objects and all, if you guys remember, we use the format of US English format. Okay. That is where it starts with MM. It starts this format MM/DD/YYYY. Right. So this is a format. So here you have the format that you have to follow, and we even followed it for the foundation objects. But when it comes to employee data, guys, it's not that format constant. So the format, it depends upon the login user language. If the user who is going to import the data, if they're going to import the data from their login and that their login is present in English US, you have to follow the US English date format. If your login is present in UK English, then while you're importing the data, you have to follow the UK English format and import it that way. So that is how you should be able to maintain the date format based on the login language of the user who is going to currently work on the data imports. Okay. Where here US Anya Singh is already in US English. If you go to the settings and see, she's in US English. Okay. So for US English, it's obviously MMDDYYYY that we can continue the same way. But for instead of US English, if you have the British English, then you have to follow DD/MM/YY. It will be repeating. So as of now, this is correct. So the only thing is we have to make sure there are leading 0. So MM/DD/YY. So what this becomes? This becomes January 3rd. January 3rd, 2001 is what it becomes as a date. Okay. That is the date of birth. So this is how you have to create your own file format, guys. Anyone any queries? Okay. So let me just save this file first and we'll import it. Just a moment. I'm just saying the local copy. Okay. So I just saved it and now let's go for the import. And I'm just going for this import data. In the importing data, this time the second file called the biographical information is what we're going to import. Choose biographical information. Choose the file that you prepared with the data. Okay. So that file what you prepared with the data is what we have to import it now. Just a second. So here you see in this, it's not going to take the entire file back into the system. So up to 10 records, it's a real-time input. The same thing what we saw in the foundation objects. So real-time threshold is a factor where if it is 10 or less than or equal to 10, so until then, the records upload will be front-end. If it is beyond 10, it will go as a background job. That is the thing. And here you have this number of records in the file are 1, failed and warnings are 0, and import is successful. So if it is successful, no errors means. So this biographical information portlet, which is having the blank country and date of birth, by the time we refresh, that will be updated. This is the one, Jan 3rd, 2001, and the country of birth is USA. Both are given. Both of them have got updated. So this way, it's all about updating the contents of the portlet, guys. So it's only the basic profile that got created first, and all the possible portlets are being updated. Any question till here? Okay. The next one in the sequence is employment details. So here we have this employment details as a third portlet. So further, if you see what are all the expected fields and all, these are the things where this is primarily going to contain multiple different set of date fields, guys. So hire date field, first date worked, original start date, seniority start date, initial stock grant. These are all the different options, actually, the different fields that we have over here, through which we will be able to maintain various kinds of dates where everybody doesn't have the requirement of having these many dates. Max 2 or 3 is what companies will have, and the rest they ask us to delete. So we basically hide them, in which hire date is important.
Hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features? Bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
Next, this original start date is can be optional again. It can be used. Hire date is very much important for the payroll perspective. First date worked, all these different fields can be used for capturing different kinds of dates about the employee in this company. Okay. So that is what we call it as the option of importing through employment details. So for that as well, same option. You just have to download the template. Just go for the download template option over here. And here we'll choose the template. So this time it is say employment details, choose employment details. And here in the employment details, these are the different columns that we have in this portlet where all these are present here. So you can choose which all you want to have from this template and you can import it. So I want to first make sure all the IDs, all the dates, not the IDs, the date fields are taken. So here I have benefits eligibility start date, and we have professional service date, seniority start date, like this. And any other date fields, guys? Personal start date is what I missed. I guess I added
Service date at last.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. So this way we have all these columns. So along with the dates, you have to make sure you are taking the user ID, which is by default added. And wherever you find this column called as person ID, guys, person ID in any portlet, you also add it. Even that system has automatically added. Same like in the basic import file, you have that assignment ID as the last column. Similar way, this person ID also acts. You just have to repeat whatever is user ID into this person ID external as well. Okay, so this way we can choose and click on generate template. The template will be generated with all the chosen columns. So that are the only columns that are required to be imported mandatorily. So I'll just open it. This is a format. Now, if you clearly observe, here we don't have any specific order of the columns. You see this, the user ID is in column number 5 here. Okay, user ID is in column number 5. So generally, employee ID is where we expect to be having in the first place generally. So against that employee ID, we have some data being maintained and all. But here, the flexibility is that I can choose my fields, what I want, and second, in whichever order they can be present, not a big problem. Even the user ID column is in the first place or in the middle place or in the ending anywhere, it gets imported. Okay. That is the employment details file looks like. Let's maintain a record. So first date work, we have kept the date of hiring as 2001, right? For the date of working, let me keep at least 20 more years. And the date of work, I'll just maintain it as mm/008. So 04 or 05/01/2000. So it's May 1st, 2000 is the first date worked. So similar one is what you have to repeat for hire date, for user ID, everything you can repeat it, not the user ID, of course. All the dates actually, for all the date related fields, you can actually repeat it. This is it. And user ID is what the employee ID for whom we are going to import the data, you can give it. So we also already have it. User ID, we are having it here. That's it. So this way we prepared the file format with all the date columns and even the user ID column. For this user, all these columns are going to be updated. So this way, prepare the file format. Same principles across all the files. Let me just save it quickly. Just a second. Just saving it. Just a moment. Yeah, done. Just saved it. Now we'll fill this employment details file also into the system. We'll load it. Where here we have it under import data. And under import data, you'll have the option here to select that employment details. Choose the file that is prepared with the data. That's it. And just click on import on the right hand bottom corner. So this is how the errors will be generally given, guys. So whichever record that you are giving, if there are any error, so the entire record data will be given like this. But for every record, what is wrongly given. Here in the person ID external, it says the null is there. So there is no person ID external column it's present in this. Yeah, here it is, person ID external, which you have to actually repeat the user ID content as I told you. So that is this. So this way system is going to make sure it is checking all the mandatory conditions and all for sure. It's all standard checks actually. Just a second, let me just save this once again, updated one. Done. I just saved it. Now let's go to the system and again try to re-import. So whenever you get an error once, guys, do not try to again import it from here. Just make sure you're refreshing the page once again. Okay. Make sure you're refreshing the page once again and freshly do the import. So here we have to import third one, employment details. Choose that. Select the file, prepare the data. That's it. Just click on import on the right hand bottom corner, where system will give you the message success or failure, whatever. This is the way it gives a success message. That means that portal is also imported properly. Where here it is employment details portal, which is not having any data information here. But if you refresh it, so here if you go for the employment details portal, so here it is, guys. See this May 1st, 2020 is the date that I have given for all these date fields. It has got updated everywhere. And all the date fields, whatever I've covered here this time, there are 6 fields, and this here there are 2 fields. All this is updated with the same input, May 1st, 2020, whatever we have given. So that way it's all about filling the portlets one after the other in the sequence, guys. Okay. Any queries on the imports process? Anyone? Okay. So this is how the employee data imports work. The key points to be remembered here is again mandatory fields. You have to make sure you are not forgetting. And the columns, whatever are mandatory on the front end, are also mandatory in the upload file format. You have to mandatorily have them in your format. Okay. So that is the way how we have to take care and import, prepare the files for the import. And on top of it, here we have 3 things that we have to finally reiterate and discuss clearly, which is, let me just show you that. Just a second, guys. So this is the one, full purge or incremental load. So we are already used with this full purge or incremental load as a concept. We are already used with this. So whenever we are required to upload the data in the production, we every time recommend to go for incremental, so that it is not going to impact the existing data. The new data will be loaded. Whereas full purge is where you can import the data and the previous record will be completely overridden with the latest records that are coming up. So that is what we saw the behavior on last week. So full purge is very cautiously to be used in the real time. So that way we have the full purge and incremental related important question in the interviews and even in the certification level generally. And then we have the synonymous, the synchronous and asynchronous, where the synchronous and asynchronous imports is nothing but that real-time threshold is. If the number of records are less than or equal to 10, it goes as a real-time import, that is synchronous. And if the upload is that import is having number of records are more than 10, it goes as a background import, and that is what we call it as asynchronous. So we have the synchronous and asynchronous with that respective purposes. And the point that will basically help us to have this asynchronous activated is real-time threshold. So in the real-time threshold as an attribute, how many fields are there? So as per that it behaves. I mean, as how many records number it is given, as per that it behaves. If the number of records are less than 10, one way. If it is beyond 10, it goes in a different way. That is as a background job. Okay. So this is one more, the terminology wise, they use synchronous and asynchronous instead of what do you say, that incremental or what is incremental load or full purge import. We can use the synchronous and asynchronous import as a terminology, guys. That is one more. And last one I want to highlight is about the partial imports. So partial import is one thing that we'll be seeing in the real time, particularly where sometimes you uploaded the data, several employees data, thousands of employees data has been imported and everything is going good. After few months of a little bit of time, we observed that everything is fine. In one of the portlet, in one of the field, there the data is a mismatch. Okay. So everything is going good. Everybody is already using the system and all. Now we got to see that in one of the particular field, the data has been wrongly imported. It is actually supposed to be imported in some other place. It got imported here. We have to correct it. So for that, now it's a say example, it's a portlet with 20 fields. 20 out of 20 fields, you have 19 fields uploaded successfully. One field you want to update. So for that one field, you can prepare a file format in this way. We clearly observe in this file format, user ID, the first column is present, and the column I, what is having some data in that column has to be updated. That column is updated. So user ID, column, and for what columns you want to update the data, that columns is what you have to maintain. Rest all in between, whatever are present, all columns can be given with this string as no underscore overwrite, double ampersand, capital letters, no underscore overwrite, again ending with double ampersand. This is the way you can actually have it. So if you see all these columns in this file format in column B, column D, column F, everywhere they are maintained with double ampersand, no underscore overwrite. So the user ID for which user you are importing and which columns you want to actually update, that columns is what you have to take care with this data. Rest all will have this token. So that is a partial import process, guys, which we generally use in the real time, where in this also the mode of import we selected as incremental import only, because we are not deleting any existing record. We are on the record, we are uploading on top of it, we are updating something else. So that is incremental. And behavior wise, the last point you see, generally, if you are importing any normal files, if you are importing 100 records, if there are 2 errors, 98 will be successful and 2 will end up with error. But in this basic import file option, out of 100 records, if you go 1 as wrong, okay, so even 1 record you went as wrong and 99 are correct also, entire upload will fail. It will say to correct that one particular record also. So that way, so the behavior wise, that is what we have to see here. Any queries here? Okay. So this is about the partial import, guys. 3 things: full version, incremental, synchronous and asynchronous, and partial import. But I want to just highlight on the end of the imports part. And next thing is we have to look into the provisioning settings of this module. So the way how this imports and all are happening later on. Provisioning settings is a topic I want to highlight, where generally in the real time we look into the provisioning settings in the starting of the project. So we have to do all the activations in the provisioning at the starting of the project actually, and then only we'll be able to carry out with the respective configurations. But here, the reason why I am discussing about the provisioning settings now is that in the initial first level session on the day one, if I try to explain you what is present in the, what do you say? Okay, let me reiterate in a different way. So basically, in the provisioning level, what all checkpoints that we are actually activating, that terminology will be completely different to you, Greek and Latin to you, because the concept of event reason derivation, business rule, okay, position management or pick list, business configuration, different things, whatever we have to activate in the provisioning. So you don't know the terminology. That we have covered all the topics. If I say business configuration, what is it? Why am I activating it? If I say workflows, event reasons, business rules, anything, you need that you have the terminologies already aware of. And when we are activating, it makes it comfortable. Where initially, if I keep discussing about provisioning, you don't understand the terminologies. That's why I park it all these days. And now such that you are done with all these topics and you have an idea of all these topic names. Now, after the employee data inputs, is where I'm highlighting this provisioning settings. Okay. So just go. So here, let me just get into the provisioning. So provisioning settings. So I just came into the provisioning system. And we know that once we are into the provisioning of a company, and the very first one called company settings is a place where we do all the activations is what we know. So let's go into this company settings. So once we are in this company settings, we know that we have several checkboxes. So starting from here, we have a lot of checkboxes of multiple modules, multiple features, language packs, all that. So specifically in terms of Employee Central related, we have to discuss. So let's do a Control F search in the name of Employee Central. A keyword as Employee Central I'm searching. So Employee Central keyword, the first checkbox is this: Employee Central Foundation Objects. Yes, of course, we know that foundation objects are the crucial role in the Employee Central structure. So the foundation objects is one main basic activation that will be done in the first place. Next, effective dated platform. Employee Central effective dated platform. Yes, that is also important. So historic data to be captured in Employee Central. So effective dated platform is one activation that will be required to be done. Next, Employee Central V2 version 2. So version 2 of Employee Central is one that we'll be activating. That has become a default activation these days. So V2 version 2 is nothing but MDF based. So seeing the SuccessFactors system on an MDF base is what the version 2 is. Before MDF platform, where everything is dependent on XML, that used to be called as V1 version 1. But there is no longer any client is not present in V1. Everybody is on V2 only. It's the only checkbox that will be default activated. If not, you can activate. And then business rules, enabling business rules for workflow derivation and enabling business rules for event-driven derivation. Two checkboxes we have. So this thing, enable business rules for event-driven derivation, we discussed during the sessions. So whenever the event-driven derivation is required, we will be doing this activation based on whenever we activate this checkbox, then only the SuccessFactors system is going to trigger the event-driven automatically using the business rule instead of user selecting the business rule. Here, this is mandatory. Workflow derivation, enabling business rules for workflow derivation is a mandatory activation, guys. So without this, you cannot have your workflows triggered. But here, having this business rule for event-driven derivation is an optional. If it is selected, it will be automated. Else, the user will be manually selecting the event and event reason that way. So these are all the respective checkboxes starting from the first keyword as Employee Central. All these are required to be activated. And then a little bit down, you will have the place for activating dependence management. Enable dependence management is one basic mandatory activation. With this activation only, we will get the dependence portlet on the front end, the place where we'll be able to maintain the dependence data. That dependence portlet will be enabled when we activate this dependence management checkbox. And for the topic that we're going to discuss from called position management, we have this position management activation. And next week we discuss time off the leave management. So for that, we have something called as enable time off like this. We have different activation points that we have for the Employee Central related. Okay. So the advanced areas are all at the bottom. Position management, time off, time sheet are all present at the bottom here. Okay. So this way, these are around 10 to 15 activations that we find where I've covered few of them here. Along with this, if you clearly observe, for most of the activations, system will give you something called as requires something else. For this checkbox to be activated, it requires something else. Like that, in that process, we have something called as enable generic objects. Enable generic objects is an option where that will be a required parameter for various checkboxes. So enable generic objects is required here, like this. In many places, enable generic objects is a required activation that we have to do for multiple places. So what is generic objects, guys? First of all, anyone? What is called generic objects? Anybody? Even while we are doing the imports last week, foundation objects imports also, we came across that. Generic objects is nothing but MDF, guys. So if you see this Excel sheet, this Excel sheet clearly says MDF objects or generic objects. So anything as MDF related can be referred as generic objects. So MDF objects is what we are basically activating. So for many of the things in the SuccessFactors Employee Central module to function, generic objects is a mandatory activation. You keep searching like this. Here you will find the generic objects activation, enable generic objects. Activating this is important for many other things in the system because everything has become MDF based these days. That's why that is important. And for generic objects, we have another thing that is important called attachment manager. So where do you find this attachment manager is? So place where you search with that keyword as Employee Central. So here when you search for Employee Central, the first checkbox you get Employee Central Foundation objects. Just 2 lines above this, here you have it. Enable attachment manager as an option. So this enabling attachment manager is basically to allow you to attach some documents in every port. In the many portlets, we have an option of adding some attachment documents. That is one. And even for you to do the data imports and all, for you to be able to select the files from the system. So the file formats, what you prepared for import, selecting that and browsing that and importing. For all that, enable attachment manager is a functionality that would be required. So that way, so we are required to make sure for any checkbox that are activating, if there are any required prerequisite activations, those checkboxes are also taken care of. And one last thing is business configuration, guys. So we are able to use this manage business configuration on the front end, right? For the succession data model related front end. So that is also an activation. It's not a default thing. If you activate it in the provisioning, you will be able to find it on the front end on the instance side. So there are people even in the market who don't know that there is such an activation for business configuration in the provisioning, and they still keep working on XML. They say that this option is not available in our system. It's all about lack of knowledge. If you activate this functionality in the provisioning, you will be able to easily handle the business configuration on the front end. So these are around the 10 to 15 employee central related activations that we have required to do. And I'll be sharing you guys the document even in the blog, in the Google Drive, you'll have it. So a document in the name of provisioning settings. For this, all the module like employee central, performance, all these modules, what are the respective checkboxes to be activated in the provisioning? For the screenshots, that document is already available. And even in the implementation document that I'll be giving you at the end of the PC sessions, even in that implementation guide, in the starting pages itself, when you start this employee central module, what all activations you should do in the provisioning, they highlight it. Okay. So for first two projects, one or two projects, you will be looking at the document and you'll do the activation. From the third project, you get habituated with it and you will, without opening any document, you will directly activate the switches. Okay, that is it. Any queries here? Okay. And next thing is about the permissions, guys. So provisioning side activations is what we have done. Next, instance side permissions is what we have to now look towards. So now people ask me, when we have already done the activations and the provisioning, what is this permissions again in the front end? So people get confused. Activating something in the provisioning is we are enabling that particular feature in this customer system. But once you enable it, who all should be able to access it? Is that every employee in the company should be able to access it? Or a particular HRs only should access it? Or only managers should be able to access it? So that is what the permissioning is. So in the provisioning, once you enable it, it is enabled in the system. But for whom it should be available, for whom it should not be available, all that is what we'll be dealing in the permissions level, role-based permissions. Okay. So if you go for this permission roles, here it is. Permission roles, where let me open any role. And as you know that we have the roles divided into two parts. Any role you go internally, you will have the user side of the permissions and the admin side of the permissions. So we'll discuss both. For the user side, what permissions will be applicable, and for admin side, what are all that. So click on this permission button. Here in the pop-up, you see it. User side of the permissions and the admin side of the permissions. So if I have to create a role for an employee or a manager or a HR, anybody in the company, it will be user side of the permissions. So as an employee, I have to use the system, or as a HR, I have to use it, or as a manager, as a CEO, if I have to use the system, all the permissions will be on the user side of the user side. Okay. In that, EC related, if you have to see, so everything is module wise segregated. Here it starts with this employee central effective dated entities. First one, employee central effective dated entities is the first one with which it actually starts. And here you have the portlets, personal information portlet, scrolling down the job information portlet, compensation portlet. So as we discussed last time, so there are 6 portlets of employee central which are effective dated, which capture everything, historic information and all. So these are the 6 portlets. You see on my screen, these are the 6 portlets. Personal info, job relationships, compensation, address, and dependents. So these 6 portlets will have their permissions covered under this employee central effective dated entities with field level controls. You will have the permissions given at a field level, first name, middle name, last name, all that. So field level, you can give the permissions like one field is editable, other field is read only, other field is completely invisible, like that. You can deal with the permissions here. Okay. So here, starting, we have the personal information, where along with all the country specific fields and all, we have a lot of fields of personal information. And then scrolling down, you will start seeing the fields of job information as well at the bottom. Just as here, address portlet, dependents portlet, job information. At last, you have this job relationships, compensation information, all this field level permissions. So what does each and every checkbox here mean is that, first of all, I'm going to give the access to see a particular field or not is a question. That is, so here in the compensation information portlet, I have a field called is eligible for car. If I want to completely hide that field, nobody should be able to see that field, say, I will completely remove all the checkboxes. Remove all the checkboxes, nobody will be able to see it. If I want if I want this field to be seen by the people, that too only the latest record. As on date, what is the eligibility for car, only that has to be seen. I'll give it as view current. Even the historic changes of that field also can be seen. Then view history, a checkbox called view history. If I want to give edit access also, in that I have two types of editing. Edit insert is one, correction is one. So as last time we discussed, if you are going to correct something on the existing data, that is, you go to the compensation information, just go for Anya Singh's record, and over here in the Anya Singh's record, if you are going to go for compensation, and here you see some field, so is eligible for benefit is a field, you see example, and if you want to have this field to be updated, so yes, no to yes, you want to update. If this update you want to make it effective if you want to update it, here you just click on the edit icon, you give date, and you can update it. So that is going to create one more new record till July 29th, one record. From July 30th, it's a different record with a different input. It is going to be two records. It is going to come into the system. So that is where we are inserting. We are inserting a new record into the system. Effectively, if you're going to make a change. Else, on the existing record itself, on the existing record, which is already, just a second, on the existing record, which is already effective, this 2019 January 1st. So on this record itself, if you want to make a correction, so from then he is eligible for benefit. So you want to update it to yes in the previous ongoing record itself. Then you'll go to the history. In the history for this existing 2000 latest record, which is effective since 2019, here I can click on edit on the right hand bottom, and I can update that record, where that update is going to take in the 2019 record, not any new record. So that is editing. That is correcting. Basically, we call it as correction checkbox.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
So on the existing record itself, you are making the correction. That is the correct checkbox required. If you're going to insert a new record into the database effective a new date, then that is edit insert. We are editing and inserting a new record. That way you have the respective checkboxes. And the last one is the delete access. Okay. So this way we have the field level controls in the Employee Central effective dated category for these 6 portlets, guys. Whereas the other portlets, apart from this portlets, what are the other portlets we have? Their permissions are all covered under a category called as employee data here. In employee data, all the other portlets are covered, like the portlets you say, which is the background portlets, HRIS portlets, all that here. The background portlets are all listed here. So you have a view access or the edit access. If I don't give anything, this portlet is not at all seen. If I select that portlet checkbox, view access will be given, but you can't edit it. If I give edit access, you can even edit the data. That way you have it. Okay. So, but you don't have a field level control. The entire portlet is going to be editable, or entire portlet is going to be viewable. You don't have a field level control here. Only for that 6 portlets, field level controls are available. Rest all portlets is of entire portlet level behavior, where first you get the background portlets, and scrolling down here you get the HRIS portlets. Here, so when it is here, it is HR information portlets. First is the background, this list, and then here it is HRIS. National ID, biographical information, phone information, email information, all these are the HRIS portlets. So apart from that 6 portlets, all the background element portlets and HRIS portlets are all covered here, where you only have the field, or you only have the portlet level control. You don't have the field level control on all these other portlets. Any queries here? Okay. So apart from the portlets, guys, so of course, Employee Central is all about the employee data, which is in the form of portlets. So all these portlets permissions are here, and all that portlets are aligned are aligned under the sections, on the people profile sections. So that is what we have here. So as we discussed in the custom MDF topic, employee views or sections is all the same. So here under the employee views category, we have all the sections and the views that are listed here. So which all things should be appeared into the employees, you can choose the respective checkboxes. All this. So example here we have personal info as a checkbox. This personal info is relevant to this personal info as a section. Where it is here, this one. This personal info section is what here this checkbox called as personal info is relevant to. If I select the permission for this personal info as a section, but internally in that personal info section, I have national ID portlet, work permit portlet, personal information portlet, contact details portlets and all. If portlets permissions are not given, I'm given section permission, but internally in that section, what portlets are expected to come. If that portlets permissions are not given, then that section will not appear on the front end. Or else you are given the access with the entire portlets, but section permission is not given, then also the section will not appear. So it works hand in hand. So both are to be aligned accordingly. So if section is there, in that section, what portlet permissions are given, only they will appear. If you don't give any portlet permission, section itself will not appear. That way, so both has to be aligned in the combination and the permissions have to be set up. You give it in one place and you don't give it in another place also, it doesn't work. Okay, so that is about the portlets related permission. And in the employee data, the place where we have given the rest of the portlets permissions, you will have a category called HR actions, guys. Here there is a category called HR actions. So a permission to do the hiring of the employee, termination of an employee, rehiring the terminated employee, or existing employee level making any changes like promotions, transfers, anything. For all that, we have the permission controls here, where you have this add new employee action, you have termination permission, rehire permission, and to update the existing records with promotions or anything, take action option, take action. Where add new employee, you guys are aware of. And take action is like on an existing employee, if you go for this take action, change job and compensation information to change the department, location, anything. So this is change job and comp information. So that is the take action we have. This is for existing employee data changes. New employee hiring, we have add new employee. And terminating the employee, you have this termination path from here. If you click on termination, so you can give the last working date of the employee and you can terminate him. So the termination date, termination reason, all the details can be filled in and you can terminate the employee. These are the three permissions. And an employee who is already terminated, if you have to rehire him, so if you go for rehire as a keyword, guys, you get this option called rehire inactive employee. Rehire inactive employee is one standard tool that we have where system will be bringing all the terminated employees in this case, who all were terminated in the system. The previous employees, all their names will be coming here. So whichever employee you want to rehire him, you can go for this rehire option. So rehire the employee, which will activate the same old employee ID, or rehire with new employment, a new employee will be generated that way. So when to use rehire and when to use rehire with new employment, it depends upon the clients and the payroll related decisions, because the employee IDs will be connected with some gratuities based on the length of service and all. So if previously if employer served already say 5 years, example in Indian case you say 5 years already gratuity has been paid to him. So now again activating that same ID is not appropriate. They recommend to go for a new employment with a new ID and all. There will be some situations where we have to activate the old ID only and all. It depends upon the client's choice. So both the options are available, either again hire with a new employee number or the same old number to be activated. We have both the things. So that is the permissions that are what we are looking at here: hiring, rehiring, termination, updating the existing record, all that. So these are all the permissions on the user side that we have, guys, in dealing with the permissions of employees. And when it comes to admin side of the permissions, admin side will all be every time relevant to the configurations. So if you are required to be given with the permission to do some configuration here, then you will be given with some permissions on the admin side. So that is where if you go for, you keep searching in the Employee Central related terminology. So first thing is foundation objects, we got it here. Import foundation data is the main activation that we have to deal with here. Whether you have the access to import foundation data to upload the legacy objects. Similarly, an access to the manage org job pay structures page. Having access to manage organization page job structures is also a permission. So like this, who can access that org job pay structure screen, importing foundation data, all that, and managing foundation objects. Even you got the access to manage org job pay structures. So which objects you can access, which you cannot access, you can choose the respective checkboxes locations, pay ranges, pay grades, everything is available. So one object to give the permission to create and one object to only view. That way also you can do. Say example, this pay ranges, pay grades. I don't want to allow anybody to create new entries. I just want to allow them to view the existing entries. Whereas locations, I want to allow them to create the new entries like that. This way we can do the permissions also. It depends upon the requirement totally. Okay. But mostly admin permissions, we don't give these selective things. So admins, we give full access only, guys. We don't give those things selectively generally. Okay. And then scrolling down a similar way, you will get into workflows. So here two important permissions are relevant to us. First is the delegation, giving the permission for the delegation configuration. And then manage workflow groups. A very important certification question also I told you. Where do you create the dynamic groups in workflows? Is called manage workflow groups as a place. So permission for that workflow groups tool and the delegation configuration that are important checkboxes here. And then for the topic that we are going to deal with from the session, position management related. Here we have positions. So here positions related different checkboxes which we'll discuss later. Manage positions, and then MDF related things will start here. Coming down, you'll find the things relevant to MDF, metadata framework. So we'll again give select all full access only, and access to configure object definition and manage data are two things we know. MDF related, two things what we discuss every time is object definition and the manage data. Apart from that, we have other tools also which are MDF based. Business rules. The place where we are writing the business rules, even that is MDF. The tool has been brought up based on MDF platform, or else if that was not there, we used to work on all that business rules through XMLs. And that used to be more difficult actually. So business rules is also MDF based tool. And the place while we are creating custom portlets, we have designed the UI of the portlet without any programming and all. We have designed the UI of it. Even that is configuration UI, which is MDF based. Tomorrow, position management, we'll discuss MDF based. Like this, we have multiple MDF related tools. We just give the full access by select all. And MDF related objects, what all you can access. So here we have MDF foundation objects, business units, cost centers, departments, divisions, all this. Here also, you have the view current view history, create, insert, correction, delete, all that access. So what access you want to give on the object, you can choose that. Okay. So this way we have the MDF foundation objects permissions as well covered here. And I guess so that's a lot about Employee Central actually. That's it. So those are all the primary Employee Central related various activations. So it's all about we just going through that permissions and we'll be able to identify which are EC related automatically. So those things, those respective checkboxes is what we have to select for you to get the access. Okay. So that way we have the permissions on the Employee Central for both the user side of the permissions and on the admin side of the permissions. Any queries here? Okay. So that is about the permissioning. And we have one more last thing under the core Employee Central activities to be discussed is HRIS sync. Human resource information sync is what a topic we say. So that HRIS sync, what does that mean is the point. That is generally whenever you are hiring an employee in SuccessFactors, so all the data is coming into the EC module. And if the data has to be applicable for all the talent modules as well, if it has to be useful for all the talent modules as well. So for any new employee who is hired in EC, if I have to do the performance launch process or any other recruitment process, anything. So we need the data from Employee Central to be in sync with the talent modules. So for that comes up this HRIS synchronization as a program, which we have to schedule in the provisioning as a background job. A program standard SuccessFactors available program, which we have to schedule in the background provisioning such that it will be executed in regular intervals every day. And that will be synchronizing the data from Employee Central to the talent modules. So to understand the concept here, guys, first thing we have to come back to the basics is, if you don't have Employee Central, what is the input for the talent modules? Anyone? When we don't have Employee Central, what is the input for the talent modules? From where the data is going into the talent modules? Employee data. Anyone? When we don't have Employee Central, if PMGM recruitment kind of other modules are being implemented, what did we discuss? It's the basic import file, guys. It's the basic import file, the similar file in which we maintain the record. So this kind of a file is the mini master data source. where we'll be able to import the data into the SuccessFactors talent modules directly. The users what are present in this file are the source of employee data for the talent modules. That is what we have discussed in the initial days. Okay. Whereas when we have Employee Central also, the fact is, even when we have Employee Central, this file is only going to be the source, gentlemen. Excuse me, not this file. One second. Let me change it. Yeah. So this file, this basic import file, what we use with first name, middle name, last name, all this mini master data. So this file is going to be the source even when Employee Central is present. That is a fact. The architecture, how it functions is, with or without Employee Central, talent modules will every time depend on this file only. So when Employee Central is not there, we will directly maintain the data in this file and we'll prepare the file. When Employee Central is in place, system, this program, this HRIS sync as a process will take the responsibility of creating entries into that file. For every new employee being hired in Employee Central, one line item will be created in this HRIS sync through this HRIS sync process into this basic import file for every new employee. If 2 new employees are joined, 2 new entries will be added into this file automatically using that HRIS synchronization job. So that is, it looks like this. So for the talent modules, the data feed is that basic import file. So this employee information, what you see, this block, you can treat it as that basic mini master import file. So the data into this file is coming first of all from Employee Central. From Employee Central through HRIS sync, it comes into this file. And from this file, it goes into the talent modules. But how is the data coming into this file is through HRIS sync, which is a standard program in the provisioning. We will schedule it to be executed at least once in a day. So that here in this basic import file, what all columns we wanted, you see it, user ID, username, first name, last name, manager, department, location, all these fields are part of one or the other portlet. Each and every field that you see here is part of one or the other portlet in the Employee Central. So department, division, location, and all you have in job information. Address details in the address portlet. The phone number in the contact information portlet. Like that, we have each and every column what you see in this file having that information stored in different portlets of Employee Central in the employee profile. So reading the data from different fields of employee profile of Employee Central, system will create one record in this basic import file. That is what this HRIS synchronization process is. Read the data from different portlets of EC and prepare one record in basic import file that will become the source for the talent modules. Okay. So that is a background job where last time when we are discussing about a background job to be scheduled in the provisioning for, a background job to be scheduled in the provisioning for alerts. We have seen alerts related configuration, right? So for that alerts configuration, the way we have scheduled the background job called EC alerts and notification. So that job is what we are going to, that similar job is what we are now going to schedule for this current case as well, where you're going into the provisioning system. Does anybody have a question? Okay. So now here, once you're into the provisioning system, we know all the provisioning settings is what we have to do in company settings. That is one place. And XML's upload is where we have to do under this succession management, import, export data models, all these places. Whereas when it comes to the background jobs, scrolling down, you will find an area in the name of job scheduler here. Managing job scheduler. In this, the first one, manage schedule jobs, is where you have to go, which we even discussed already under the alerts configuration, business rule as save alert. So going under this manage schedule jobs, here you will have an option called create new job. Create new job as an option you will have. You just click on this hyperlink called as create new job. So here you will be able to give the details of the job, like the job name, job owner, all these things, same what I explained last time. Job type level, here you have to choose the job as HRIS, this one. Job type as HRIS sync is what we have to select. So that job will be executed at the regular intervals. So when it is executed, contact portlet, business address portlet, salary information, personal information, employment information, all these portlets are going to get synchronized with that mini master record file. And that record is going to be created. And here you have the scheduling option. So it has to occur recurring every day in different intervals of time. So some companies will configure it every 6 hours. Some companies every 12 hours. It depends upon. Minimum once in every day is recommended. So like this, you can have it scheduled for multiple intervals of a day. Okay. Any queries here? So this is called the concept of HRIS synchronization, guys. It is just a background job that we have to schedule in the provisioning at the end of the Employee Central core implementation is done. So with these 14 steps, the core Employee Central implementation will be completed, and even for the SuccessFactors Employee Central certification as well. So till this topic is important. Okay.